as many of you know, I like to use this kind of push stick right here. What I like about this push stick is that it not only pushes the work through the saw safely, it also holds the stock down so it can't lift up. And that's a major drawback that I found with this type of push stick. It's that I'm out of breath here because I just had a major coughing fit. So excuse me for that. I'm going to catch my breath and I'll come back. Okay, I think I'm good now. I don't like these because they don't hold down the front of the stock. It can lift up, and that's a problem. This one is actually better than most because usually this bird's mouth cut that's in the front here is shallower and it doesn't do as well as holding this down. The biggest problem I see with this thing though, here I go again with the cough, is the notch is way too deep. I mean, you can't handle thinner stock. This is 1/2-inch plywood, and that's gonna, it's not gonna make contact with the surface properly. The other thing that I don't like about it is the angle of your hand as you're pushing the stock through the saw. You're holding the stick like this. Your wrist is cocked over like that. Whereas when you're holding this push stick, your wrist is nice and straight, and that's where it's going to be the strongest. So if kickback starts to happen, you're more likely to stop it or deal with it with your wrist nice and straight like that, rather than having it cocked over like that. I guess I've popularized this design on YouTube, although it's not mine. You can see, if you go back and look at the New Yankee Workshop from the 80s, you'll see Norm using this type of push stick right here. Very similar to this. I think this L shape, this really straight up L shape, is mostly mine, but I got the inspiration from that. And it's, overall, it's the best push stick in my opinion. What I've heard people say as a downside to it is how close your hand is to the blade as it passes through. The way I look at it is close is not really important. What's important is that you don't touch the blade. There's a difference between coming close to the blade and actually touching it. Touching it is the thing you don't want to do. So whenever I'm using my push stick or whenever I'm making a cut on the table saw, I lower the blade so it just clears the work. So that's down as far as it possibly can be. I don't want the blade sticking up any higher than it absolutely needs to be. Also, when I'm pushing it through, I'm trying to keep my pushing action against the fence as well. So my hand is always going in this direction over here. If you've been watching me, you'll probably see me do this like hundreds of times, but I'm gonna make a cut with the table saw using this push stick, and you can see what I'm talking about. Actually, for this cut, this being what, 4 3/4, I wouldn't even use a push stick because my hand can fit between there no problem, okay? But I'm gonna use it just for illustration's sake. All right, as I'm pushing it through, the first thing I do is I start it, and I've got my left hand over here, and I'm pushing it up against the fence. That's very important. And then once it gets started, then I engage the push stick at the back here. Meanwhile, I'm still holding the work with my left hand. That's the #1 problem that I see when I watch other people using a table saw. They let go of the work when you should never, ever, and I cannot stress this enough, never let go of that work. Never let up, always have at least one hand on that board so that it cannot, rattle around there and catch on the blade and come back at you. That'll be a bad situation. So I'm holding the fence, the work up against the fence. I'm pushing it through with the push stick. I'm not over here against the fence with the push stick because that'll make the board rack this way. When you push at this side here, and I'll demonstrate it over here, when you push it here, it goes that way. And it'll do the same thing inside the saw here. So always try to center it or better is closer to the blade. But I had it centered and that's good enough. So I'm pushing it through. I'm also pushing it this way with the other hand. Nothing wrong with that. I see a lot of people using two push sticks, doing more or less the same thing, except I guess the comfort level is higher because you know you're further away from the blade, but you don't have as much control because, okay, right now I'm pushing it through and now I've run out of space for the second push stick to go, and I need to transfer it to a head to keep holding the work down. In the meantime, the work is unsupported. It can lift up. So less than an ideal situation there. I don't like being removed from the work too far. I like to be close to the work. I like to feel what it's going to do. If it's going to kick back, you'll feel it. All this, of course, comes with practice. The only way to get this is to practice over and over again, and eventually you get a feel for it. But I don't think it's even possible to get a feel for it if you're this far away from it. I actually made this video, or I started making this video, because I was going to modify this push stick. I wasn't going to modify this one itself, but I was going to make one based on it that I think would work better. And I was going to use this piece of plywood that I just ripped. So, like I say, I don't like how your wrist is cocked over like that. So I was thinking to make the handle more upright on the end, very similar to what mine is. But I need to get the geometry straight here. So if the push stick is like that, it should be basically at 90 degrees to this L up here. So I'm just gonna kind of line that up on the piece of wood here and draw it out. Okay, that's pretty rough, but I'm gonna try to refine it here on the bandsaw as I cut it out. Still a little bit rough, but you know what? It gets the general idea happening. The idea was to, I guess, to combine the best of both worlds, you know, the extra length of this type here with the extra hold down of this type, and plus the correct angle of handle on there. And the only thing left to do is to try it out and see how it works. Okay, not bad, I guess. I could probably get used to it, but it just doesn't seem as right. With this one, and you're pushing down, you get positive contact, and you can feel how well your contact is with this. Whereas this one, because you're so far away from the object, the stock, it tends to rock there a little bit. So you might have to do a little bit more adjusting, but you know what? It's something that you could probably get used to. So, you know what? If you're not comfortable, you know, being this close to the saw, then this is an option, I guess. It's just, I don't think you're going to be seeing me using it in the future.